Hello, okay, it's gone 2 o'clock, we'll make a start. So my name's Peter, I'm the Managing Director of 123 Sheets. We currently file VAT returns on behalf of about 27,000 entities that are registered for VAT. Half of that is through the agents filing on behalf of the clients, or another half by the clients. Okay, so we undertook a spreadsheet bookkeeping survey in December last year to have a look at how many, is there a substantial amount of landlords and sole traders who are already using a spreadsheet. So we did this via Accounting Web. So people weren't quite sure why they were being asked this, to sort of make sure we weren't just asking people who were already using spreadsheets. We didn't ask our existing customers. The survey was very representative of the spread of accountancy firms, mainly small firms, but some larger ones as well. And we had over 100 accountancy firms that took part in the survey, and representing 17,000 sole traders. And we discovered that 48% of those were completing bookkeeping on a spreadsheet. In terms of landlords, the agents were filing tax returns for 7,000 landlord clients, of which 49% were completing their records on a spreadsheet. We also asked people, or tax agents, what type of spreadsheet they were using, and 95% of them were using Microsoft Excel, which is not surprising because most accountancy firms have a window-based operating system rather than Apple Mac or something else, or Google. So people naturally aren't using Google Sheets. They're not using Apple Numbers. They may do if they don't have an agent, but normally the agent is after a spreadsheet because they have Windows machines. Now what that tells us is not only that most of them are using a Microsoft Excel for their spreadsheets, those are using spreadsheets, it also tells us that the number one piece of software that people are currently using, if you're a sole trader or if you're a landlord, is a spreadsheet. So we know we've got lots of clients using spreadsheets already. So how do we decide which of those actually are going to come and continue on a spreadsheet? Or even maybe they're not even on a spreadsheet at all yet, but you might want to put them on a spreadsheet. So we're talking about sole traders and landlords. Now, just with the SA 100 filing, there's no requirement to send in P&L, balance sheet. All that HMRC requires is the income and expenditure figures. In fact, the API that talks between the software provider and HMRC, there is no functionality within that API to send balance sheet figures, unlike the self-assessment tax return where you can choose an option to send balance sheet information in. But in MTD, there is no requirement or even ability to send in balance sheet information. It's literally just income and expenses. That means that you can develop a simple spreadsheet or have a simple spreadsheet to send that data to HMRC. Obviously, sole traders or landlords that have non-compliant reporting issues may not necessarily, you might not want to put them on a spreadsheet. So for example, they want an aged creditor or debtor listing, or they want to have some sort of management report on an ad hoc or a regular basis. And obviously, you probably don't necessarily want to have them on a spreadsheet unless you've got an all singing, dancing spreadsheet, which most accountants don't tend to have. Obviously, those who are already on a spreadsheet, or potentially clients who arrive with a paper bag of receipts on an annual basis, or even those with a sort of a paper bag sort of e-file job where maybe you're given a link to download Dropbox files with maybe a whole load of PDFs in there for you just to quickly knock in a spreadsheet from the PDF files to undertake that job to do their bookkeeping, or indeed you may in fact be getting the client to do their own bookkeeping. To send the quarterly submissions. A lot of it is about the spreadsheet capability that you've got. If you're relying on your own spreadsheet that you knocked up in 5 minutes to send to your client, the capability of that spreadsheet probably is not amazing. If you sent it out to 100 different taxpayers, you'd probably get 100 different versions that came back. The spreadsheet capability that you've got and your setup will dictate which sort of clients you might be wanting to send a spreadsheet to. And obviously, it also depends on who's going to be filling that in. If you're expecting the client to do it, they're more likely to be messing around with a spreadsheet, trying to insert stuff, messing up formulas. Less so your junior staff, presumably. and whether maybe you've got a bookkeeper that you know very well who you can get a lot of work from to get them to do the bookkeeping, and then you can just do the year-end checks and final submissions. Okay, so what's a good bookkeeping spreadsheet? I'll whiz through this very quickly. So you want one that's pre-configured for the users. So a spreadsheet literally that just has the HMRC categories already embedded into the spreadsheet that can't be added to or destroyed by the client. I think most software providers that I know, when I used to run my own accountancy firm, didn't have very good pre-configuration. So for example, if I went into most of the software that I remember, I went into all of it in fact, if you put in to say, oh yeah, this particular client is not VAT registered, you'd still got the ability somehow to insert VAT on a purchase invoice, and then at the year end when we go through it, we realise actually this bookkeeping needs to be completely redone because there's a massive balance sheet figure of VAT when they're not VAT registered. So 20% of their expenses has actually just been thrown onto the balance sheet. And of course, you can't just put it into one category because it came from a whole raft of different expense categories. So you want to have a spreadsheet that avoids those issues. So the spreadsheet can be tailored specifically to the client needs. If they are VAT registered, there's capability in the spreadsheet to do that. If they're not VAT registered, you want to have some facility to make sure that they can't put VAT stuff in there. And equally on the chart of accounts side of things, with a lot of software providers, you're having to spend quite a bit of time setting up a chart of accounts. And I can imagine even if you do that very nicely at the beginning and let the client have a go, they'll probably insert some new categories because they couldn't find the one they were looking for, even though maybe it's somewhere else. And then maybe they're not mapping it correctly to the correct HMRC expense category. So I can quite imagine that if you're putting small little people onto some sort of other bookkeeping software that hasn't been made bulletproof, you're going to end up with a bit of a mess to tidy up that you don't really want to get involved in. So you don't want somebody who's going to be creating, editing, deleting formulas. All that sort of stuff should typically be locked down. You'd also potentially want to be using a drop-down for your expense categories. Typically, the accountants that knock up their own spreadsheet in 5 minutes, they will have a raft of columns going down for all the different expense categories. So the person who's doing the data entry, on the left hand, they'll be first of all typing in their date and maybe a reference, some narrative, and then having to scroll across and find some column somewhere, and then having to go all the way back just to enter in one particular expense. It's much better to have a single column that has a drop down. Someone can just tab across to that particular cell. And in Excel, normally if something is in a column that's already above, it will recognize what it is. So for example, if it was travel, you just fill in the data, you get to the expense category, you put T in and travel expenses is automatically put in there, and then you just tab to the actual net on the VAT and so on. And the beauty of that also is you can lock the drop-down to only be the HMRC category. So if a client decides to start typing in that cell, even though it's a drop-down, when they then press enter at the end or they try to tab across, it will basically tell them, sorry, you can't do that. It's not one of the listed things, and it will just take it off. You want to be able to easily review transactions that are to be filed to HMRC. I'll show you how that works on a spreadsheet that we can give to you. You also want a spreadsheet that locks the reported data. Once the data has been sent to HMRC, you don't want the client or the junior accidentally copying and pasting something over the top of something that's actually been sent to HMRC. You want some facility to be able to lock that data. But then on the other hand, when it comes to doing a year-end check from the accountant's point of view, you want to be able to unlock that data so you can change it if you need to do an annual filing where you can effectively in one go do an annual filing and write over the top of 4 quarters that were previously submitted to send in updated information. And I would imagine realistically that 95% of the time you're going to be doing that, writing over what the client has already submitted, because even if you've got the best client who's got the best records, they've got 2 inherent problems. First of all, they've only got a month to do their quarterly submission. So if they haven't got all of their expenses yet from their suppliers, they can't really enter it yet. Another inherent problem is the taxpayer doesn't know what's allowable or disallowable. They put their Range Rover they bought and they put it down to travel. Okay, so at the year end, you're going to have to still go stuff. So you want a spreadsheet at the touch of a button. It will produce something that will recreate the entries for the year after you've done some adjustments to file an overriding annual submission where you've got a lot more time to make that annual submission. They've only got a month, but the accountant after the year end, they've got from the close of the tax year all the way around to the next January to make any changes and make a final submission. A good spreadsheet will also avoid errors and provide error messaging. So if the user, for example, hasn't categorized something, there's a big giant red message that comes up to say, you need to go down to cell such and such because you haven't filled that in. Maybe there's a date missing or the date's outside the accounting period. You also potentially want to have a spreadsheet that takes care of the VAT filing and obviously have a bit of capability for disallowable amounts and personal expense usages. Now, a lot of that should come down to your pre-configuration of the spreadsheet. So a lot of clients aren't VAT registered. Maybe for a lot of them, they don't have any personal use to deal with. So the spreadsheet should be easily changed so that it can just fit with what the client's doing and not ask them other things like personal percentage uses where there isn't any. Okay, in terms of choosing a good bridging software provider, you'd have to think about, are they producing a spreadsheet for me? A good bridging software provider will provide a spreadsheet that will take many, many months to design. And if you're doing your own, it probably may have only taken you half an hour and doesn't have all the facilities that I've just mentioned. You also want to have a bridging software provider where in terms of the actual filing of the headline data, it's fast. I would imagine that if your bridging software provider it's taking more than 3 minutes to send the final data to HMRC, you've probably got the wrong bridging software provider. Also, it has to be simple for the client to be able to file if you're wanting them to be doing their own quarterly submissions. A lot of clients are going to want to do quarterly amended submissions. You'll find that some clients, they'll file something and then literally 5 seconds later they realise, oh yeah, I just forgot that. And you could say to them, look, don't worry about it, we'll just put it in the next one. But there's an inherent desire amongst some taxpayers, no, I want to get it right the first time, I want to go back and resubmit that one that I've just done, and they can do that. So it's not like VAT where you need necessarily to put the missed expense on the next quarter. You can, on our software, for example, you can, 2 minutes later, 10 minutes, 10 days, whatever, resubmit that quarter if the taxpayer wants to do that. Or equally, you can just let it roll over onto the next quarter. You want the ability to amend the annual income expenses. I talked about that because 95% of your clients are not going to get the data in exactly the right way for the right boxes for you ready to actually press the final button to submit their final end of your data. You'll need some sort of facility to overwrite the 4 quarters and put a final submission in. Also, in terms of bridging software, the client might want to have an HMRC tax calculation. So part of the reason why HMRC are coming up with ITSA MTD is because they want taxpayers to know on a more regular basis about what their expected tax bill is, rather than having to wait almost another year to suddenly be surprised what their tax bill is. HMRC have a capability in the API to be guessing or estimating, whichever one of those two you want to go by, what the tax liability is. Obviously, I would imagine that will come. When ITSA MTD was first mooted in 2016, HMRC did want to have quarterly payments. Obviously, they're now just saying, oh no, we just want the information so the taxpayer knows that. But I can imagine, maybe 8 years' time, they're going to want to have quarterly payments. Also, on the bridging software provider, do you want additional features? So, for example, if you're doing filings yourself or you've been wanting to monitor what clients are doing, do you want to have deadline management system with staff access control so you can allocate different clients to different members of staff, and each person can have their own deadline list and they can see which ones they've filed. Our deadline management is intelligent. What I mean by that is you don't have to tell the software, I've filed that in the deadline. You don't need to go to the deadline and say, oh yeah, I did that job. When you file a return, the software knows that you filed a return. It updates the deadline management system. You don't need to go in there and touch it. It just does stuff and it tells you what's coming up and what you haven't done. And it categorizes it by what's overdue, what's coming up in the next 5 days, and then other filings after that by deadline filing date. Okay, you also have to make potentially a decision about whether you wanted to go for a browser-based solution or an Excel add-in. So with an Excel add-in, you have the spreadsheet and you're putting in, you're having to install an app into the Excel. The advantage of that is it means that you don't need to leave Excel to make a filing. However, there are downsides to the Excel add-in, is that obviously it takes a while maybe for you to work out how to install that, and if you accidentally uninstall it, it becomes a pain to put it back in again. Also, the capability has been numbed down normally in an Excel add-in. It doesn't have the same range of facilities as a browser-based solution would do, such as deadline management and so on, and staff access control. Also, with an Excel add-in, every time you open up Excel, it's loading that add-in. So if your client is only filing once in every 90 days, every other time they open that spreadsheet for the other 89 days, they're installing some add-in that they're not even using. Okay, what I'd like to do now is just to show you briefly what our software looks like then for MTD ITSA. Okay, so this actually is our VAT one in terms of just to show you that you can manage your clients from here. This is what the deadline looks like. We'll have the same thing for ITSA. Yep, so returns overdue. There aren't actually any ones within 5 days in this example here. You can go to settings where you can deal with your users, and you can allocate clients to particular users. We will also have an ability. We're going to add in an extra functionality to have it by partner as well, so partners can have a look at all their VAT returns that are due as well. On the ITSA filings, the history will show you what's previously been filed. So on this first page, we see that the user has 3 outstanding income expenditure self-employment quarters to do because they've already done one that's in the history. That's there, and you can go and view that, or you can go back and amend it. This is a browser-based solution as opposed to an Excel add-in. This is the page that a taxpayer will arrive at, or a junior if they're doing the filings. The software relies on the fact that obviously you've already registered for MTD, you've inserted the national insurance number. It's the national insurance number that actually the HMRC go by on their API. So if someone, for example, has a property rental and they've also got 2 sole traderships, we send the national insurance number to HMRC. They send back the obligations for all of those scenarios that need to be filed. So if a taxpayer had 2 self-employments and a property rental, they would actually have at the beginning of the tax year 12 quarterly submissions to be made, 4 for each, and it will all be listed on one single page. And obviously as they file, they drop off because this only shows the ones that haven't yet been filed, because the ones that have been filed are on the history tab. And we can see, this is a self-employment one. Okay, then in terms of filing, so this is on the website. There are 2 options. One option is to file from our spreadsheet that we can give to you free of charge. And the other option is, actually, no, my client's been using their particular spreadsheet for 30 years and they don't want anybody else's spreadsheet. They just want to use their one and they won't come off. I did have somebody who emailed in yesterday, very worried, a taxpayer, saying that if I can't use a spreadsheet, I'm actually going to have to sell one of my properties because I'm not doing all this stuff on other software. Anyway, to get under his, I presume you only had 2 properties. Okay, let's do first of all the one where the person who's completing the tax return, the quarterly filing, is going to be using their own bespoke spreadsheet that we don't really have very much to do with. So they're going to have to use our default template. So what they would do, here's our default template here. They can either keep this as a separate spreadsheet that's separate from their bookkeeping, and they can sort of map totals across. Or in this example, the person's decided they only just want to have one simple spreadsheet, and they're just going to insert our spreadsheet as a worksheet into their existing bookkeeping spreadsheet just to keep it together as one. So in that situation, let's say that this particular self-employed person, they're below the VAT threshold. So therefore they can use simplified expenses. That means they only have to send 3 numbers to HMRC, and in most cases it's probably only 2. The only 3 numbers that need to be sent to HMRC on a simplified expenses basis is the sales, other business income, which most self-employed don't have, and then a total consolidated number for all of their expenses. So in this example, we're going to do that. I just need to map the template to the underlying bookkeeping in the spreadsheet. So I'll just put an equal sign in there, and then I go and find where the sales in somebody's bookkeeping is, which is that one there. And then this one here, put all expenses here if using consolidated expenses. So actually I'm going to use that, and I'll go to the purchases and take the total of net purchases, and that's the spreadsheet ready. I think a lot of people are actually going to find, this might sound really weird, but I think a lot of people are actually going to prefer ITSA MTD to VAT, because for a lot of sole traders, they don't have 9 boxes to fill in, they've probably only got 2. Or maybe even if they're above the VAT threshold, they may only have 7 maybe, and all the rest are automatically zeros, so they don't need to touch them, you can just leave them how they are. The other benefit of ITSA MTD is that if you've got the client and they're regularly having to do their books on a quarterly basis, you do not need to wait then until the following January or the 20th of January for them suddenly to magically give you their spreadsheets, because they've already done it at the end of the tax year. And if you're getting the client to do the quarterly filings, that means you can now spread that workload over a much longer period. Okay. So we've got the spreadsheet ready. All we need to do now, so just make a note. Okay, so I'm expecting to submit a profit of 18,900. So I go back to the browser website that's going to sort of suck up that data. I can either drag and drop the spreadsheet, or I can choose the file. I needed to choose simplified expenses, and then go and choose the file. It's that one, and upload that data. 18,900, there it is, and there's my 2 figures that I've mapped. Okay, that's exactly what I'm expecting. I'm going to send that to HMRC. So that's an example where somebody is using their own spreadsheet that we've got nothing to do with. They're just using our template to map their totals to our worksheet. Okay, I'm now going to show you an example of somebody who has actually decided, or maybe the accountant has said, look, I want you to use this spreadsheet. Okay, so let's do that, and we'll do a quarterly filing this time using our spreadsheet. So I'll go to our bookkeeping spreadsheet, which is this one. Let me just go to the contents page. Okay, so first of all, you notice down the bottom, there are not sort of death by worksheets down the bottom. At any one time, there's only one worksheet open. There's sort of code embedded into the spreadsheet that does a lot of the hard work, making sure that clients can't mess things up, delete stuff, overwrite stuff, and I'll take you through some of that. Okay, the first thing you probably want to do before you send the spreadsheet to the client is to set it up for their particular situation. So you're looking at, have you got more than one self-employment? Are you VAT registered? Have you got expenses with personal use? Are there tax disallowable expenses? And that will then when you select a yes or no to that, the other tabs behind the scenes will then be made more complicated or more simple, depending on how you fill that in before you gave it to the client. So the client can't start putting in stuff that's not applicable because it's been shut off. And we can password protect that so the client can't go in and change and say they're VAT registered when actually they're not, or what it might happen to be. And put the accounting period in there as well. And then that sort of drives, the way in which the data entry works. So in this example, we said this person was VAT registered, so they can do their net, their VAT, and a VAT special. So the VAT special is just basically to tag a particular transaction to ensure you're filling in boxes 2, 8, 9 of a VAT return. So in this example, the sales, there was some goods dispatched to the EU from a Northern Ireland. There's features on here to make sure the client can't make some mistakes. So for example, if I start filling in a row, but I haven't actually put the date in, there's a big error. Errors exist. Please check for errors on the right. So what's my error? No date has been. Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, I forgot to put a date on that row. Oh, yeah. Okay, let me just put that in. Oh, I've still got an error. What's that one then? Oh, date outside financial year. Oh, yeah, I made a boo-boo on the date. Oh, okay. 15 of the 4th, 2018. Okay. So, and there's also issues in here, like, for example, if someone enters in, if there's been an EU dispatch, then there should not be any VAT. It should have been no VAT. So again, there's an error. Someone put something in a box that shouldn't be there. No VAT should have been entered on that one because that's actually going to the EU from Northern Ireland. So there basically is lots of features in there to send up messages to people. If I just right click, you can see a lot of the features have been turned off. You can't insert, you can't delete anything. You may recall that if you go to a spreadsheet and go to the corner, a little thing appears where you can sort of drag and drop stuff and put something accidentally on top of something else, but this doesn't do that. There's no capability to sort of accidentally pick something up and throw it on top of something else. Okay. On the purchases side of things, so yeah, this has like the drop-down expenses that are pre-mapped to HMRC. So as I said, if you type in T, travel costs come up, then you can then tab across, fill in the rest of the detail. This also obviously has the error messaging that comes up. It deals with all the VAT particular requirements that you might have. So if you're using the reverse charge, maybe if you've got postponed VAT accounting, takes care of all of those VAT issues, as well as doing ITSA. I might have a bit of time to show you at the end of VAT submission, but I'll show you the income tax one. I think that's what people are most interested in. So on the income tax file, in terms of doing a quarterly filing, so don't forget, this is a spreadsheet. This is on someone's desktop. This is not on the cloud. This is on someone's computer, your junior or the client themselves. And before they actually come to file, they probably want to run a detailed report first of all, just to have a look to see what's included, what's about. They don't just want to just send the totals and not actually have a look at what's been sent to HMRC in detail. So how this works is this particular spreadsheet generates PDF files for the reporting. So on this particular detailed report, there's the headline figures there. Profit of 26,000, and bad debts I can see there, 700. I don't remember having any bad debts. So because this is a PDF, I can use Control Find, and I can just type in bad debt or bad D. There's 2 entries. There's a second one there. Oh yeah, that's that guy who didn't pay me 9 months ago. I remember now. Yeah, and obviously these totals add up to the totals on the page. It also shows you where did the information come from. This particular entry can be found on the purchases worksheet, for example. This is the detailed one that you can check through, make sure you're happy with this before you submit anything to HMRC. In terms of submitting to HMRC, you click on the HMRC file button. It then asks you, are you sure? Because when you click yes, basically, it's going to lock that data so that it cannot be edited. In fact, it does allow you to edit certain features like the narrative. You can go back and change the narrative, but you can't change the date. You can't change the expense category because that's been sent to HMRC, that amount on that expense category. And that, again, all these reports generated are PDF files, which means that there's less chance of your client going in trying to adjust the thing that's about to be submitted because it's a read-only thing. That was the 26,000, the same one I saw on the summary, on the detailed report. So I'm happy with that now. I can now send that to HMRC. So I've saved the PDF file already when I've just closed it, but it automatically saves it wherever you'd like to have it. And then what I can do is I can then go and make that quarterly submission. So I just go and find that PDF file, which is, that one there, and upload that. That's the PDF data there, and I can see down the bottom, there's my 26,000 I was expecting. Because the profit number is effectively just casting and adding up the numbers above, I know that if that's the profit number I'm expecting, I don't really need to go back and and check every single number. So I can just tick that to say, yes, it's complete, and send that to HMRC. So that is where you've handed our sort of cast iron spreadsheet either to your juniors or you handed it out to lots of different clients to use. The one I just showed you was for sole traders. We also have a different one for property rental that again does a similar thing. You go into the settings, you say what's up with this particular client. Have they got foreign holiday let? Are they using a rent-a-room scheme? And it will make the spreadsheet more complicated or more simple. You also have the ability in the spreadsheet to add beneficial owners in there. So if you've got 3 people that own a portfolio of properties with different varying percentages, you can there'll be separate buttons for each beneficial owner to generate a PDF file for what they need for their submission from a single bookkeeping of all of your property portfolio on there. Right, I guess that's pretty much it. I'll just quickly do one last thing. So I'll show you, you can actually file an amended return to overwrite all the quarterly data. So let me quickly do that. In the bookkeeping spreadsheet, on our one at least, that would mean you going to the income expenditure report worksheet. There's a summary for the whole year, clicking on the HMRC export button, creating a PDF for that. Okay, now that one's actually only 11,900 profit. Okay, then I just, now I've created that PDF, I can go back to the website and upload that PDF file. Where is it? Where is that one? Okay, and yeah, upload that. And I can go down to the bottom and I can see, oh yeah, that's the profit that I wanted. On this annual one, there's more columns. That's because, first of all, we've got from HMRC what their numbers are. Then we've uploaded the spreadsheet, so we've got those numbers in the columns, and then we have to send to HMRC the adjustments, basically the difference between what HMRC says they've already got for the quarter and the difference from the spreadsheet that you've just uploaded. And it's actually those differences that get sent to HMRC. But down the bottom, yeah, we can see that's what we're expecting actually HMRC to have for the year, and then just file that to overwrite the 4 quarters that have previously been submitted. And I guess that's it, really.
Do you have capital accounts?
On the spreadsheet, when you say, okay, for partnerships, you mean?
No, property.
So when you say capital accounts, are you referring to like a balance sheet accounts? Is that what you mean? Okay. So no, our spreadsheets do not have balance sheet items on them at the moment. We are going to be designing spreadsheets that do in due course. Obviously, companies are going to have to do corporate tax, MTD, at some point in the future. But it's more likely that we're going to have a sort of a general ledger and a trial balance that will produce the P&L reports. We do actually already have a spreadsheet that does that, but it's not really ready to sort of hand out to people yet. So that's not a priority for us right now. In terms of our spreadsheet development, our priority is more about adding extra features in terms of getting a bank feed into the spreadsheet via probably an Excel add-in, just to download a whole load of stuff in, and people can just literally just go down a single column and put T for travel and C for cost of goods very quickly down a spreadsheet. Yeah. Any other questions?
It's the same spreadsheet that could be used for VAT returns.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so the spreadsheet that I had here does VAT returns. In fact, if I just go back to that, so it's just a different button. There's a detailed report, and obviously, and then there's a summary report. Again, once you've said yes, it's closed off, locks those data, and the detailed report shows what's included in every single box, and then down the bottom it shows you what's not been included on the VAT return. So for example, if someone had accidentally said that a particular expense was outside the scope of VAT, it will flag that and say, are you sure this was right? Maybe there'll be some stuff down the bottom that's correct and shouldn't be included on the VAT return. So if I scroll down to the bottom here, purchase worksheet entries excluded from the VAT return. Van depreciation in January, okay, that's fine, not expecting that. Oh, but there's some bricks there. Then you can go back to the purchases worksheet and go and have a look at that and find out what someone did. Probably they would have made that outside the scope of VAT, which is why it hasn't been included on the VAT return. But you just go back and change it and then rerun this report, and it would have been, that expense then would have gone into box 7 for the purchases.
So that's using the same.
It's basically a very, exactly, yeah. It's creating another PDF, upload that PDF to our website browser to file the VAT submission. Yeah, from one spreadsheet that does both VAT and ITSA. Yeah. I think, okay, one last question.
When we do the amended returns, you don't need to do the adjustment yourself.
Okay.
You put in there, it will automatically.
Are you talking about the annual adjustment?
No.
The quarterly?
The amended return for the quarter.
Okay, so on a quarter, there are two, this particular spreadsheet does it in 2 different ways. Depending on what you want to do. So if the user, for example, has just filed something and half an hour later they realise they didn't include something, they basically put that into the bookkeeping, make sure obviously the date is correct, and then just rerun that quarter, and it will then include it on the same period, and then they can go to our website and file an amended return for that specific period. Or the alternative basis is to do it more similar, akin to a VAT return, where basically you just don't run another one of those final reports, don't close off the period, and it will know when you then go to do your next quarterly submission, it will know there's a transaction dated sometime before that was not ever included on a previous quarterly submission, so it knows to put it in on the next one. Which typically bookkeeping packages tend to do that. Good ones will know what's been that it hasn't been filed before, and will pick it up and throw it onto the next one.
There's a separate return for each self-employment, but is there for each property?
No, so it's very similar to how it works on the property return at the moment. So where you will have multiple 4 quarterly submissions will only be if someone's got like a UK non-FHL or an FHL, or they've got an overseas property that would normally go into different parts of the tax return. So if you've got multiple properties and they're all of the same type, then you just need to file 4. So it's not like self-employment. So if you remember on a self-employment self-assessment tax return, for each self-employment you have to do separate pages. But if you've just got 4 property rentals and they're all holiday lets, you only need to fill in the 1 page for the holiday lets that will combine all of that. Our spreadsheet on the property side, it can also produce a report per property if you want it to, so that a taxpayer can see how well they're doing on each property. But in terms of the ITSA filing, it will combine that data if it knows it's if you've got a number of properties that are actually of the same ilk.
But the client can input property by property.
Yeah, they can. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so our spreadsheet, again, the spreadsheet can be made more complicated or more simple. So in the settings page, there's a question about, do you have more than one property? And then if you do have more than one, which obviously then means you're going to have to insert an extra column because each expense will need to be categorised to a particular property, it will ask you how many there are. And then you can put in the names of all of those properties. And once a particular transaction has been tagged to that property, the user can't go into the settings and delete that property because it's being used. It comes up with a message saying, well, sorry, we can't delete that one because you've already put some expenses to that one, for example.
How does the VAT work?
So there is different spreadsheets, one for property and a different one for the sole tradership. We don't have a combined spreadsheets for both of those two. Yeah, that's a bit more. Yeah. I mean, we haven't dealt with that yet. But if you've got multiple self-employments, you can have one spreadsheet, and that will all go onto one VAT return. But yeah, for properties, we haven't dealt with that particular issue. Yeah. And I'm not sure if we would, because I don't think there are too many taxpayers that applies to. So I'm not sure if we'd, because basically, we've got. I mean, I know it seems like we've got a long time to go, but we've got lots of priorities of things we want to do where there's a lot more taxpayers involved in certain issues than that particular issue. And we would just say, go and use something else probably.